I think that every organization is different. It's hard to find the similarities. So that means that if you want to do the best for your employees, and you also want to make sure that you can measure things so that you can also make your office effective, make sure you find the right partner who can help you with that. Like an expert who says, okay, let's sit down and write it out and make sure that you benefit from both sides.
Welcome back to a new episode of the Gobright Vodcast. Today we are joined by Jens, HR manager at Bilfinger, and he will tell us all about the challenges of effective collaboration. Jens, could you introduce yourself a little bit, maybe?
Yeah, sure. I'm Jens Wael. I'm 43 years of age. I'm Belgian originally, but I work a lot in the Netherlands. I'm HR manager for the company Bilfinger in Belgium and the Netherlands, spread over 3 big offices, one in Den Haag, but that's more the responsibility of my colleague. My responsibility is in Rotterdam, Waalhaven, and in Zwijndrecht, close to Antwerp.
Very nice. Nice. I have in my notes down here, because we had a phone call before this, that you've been an HR manager for 14 years. Is that correct?
Well, I'm actually in HR for more than 20 years,
wow.
But I'm coming from the more, what they say, the hard side of HR, payroll, insurances, legal, and I'm pretty much in the soft side now for 14 years, and also 14 years within the Bilfinger company. So I actually made the switch to the soft side of HR, recruiting and development of employees, learning and development. Made the switch when I joined Bilfinger.
Right. That makes sense. And that happened 14 years ago.
That happened 14 years ago, almost 14 years ago.
Okay. Well, the topic of today is effective collaboration between teams. So I'm pretty confident you can tell us a lot about that as an HR manager. Of course, also joining us today again is Chris. Chris, maybe you can do a short introduction. People already know you because we're on the 3rd episode, but maybe if people are tuning in now.
Yeah. Well, I'm still Chris. So, and I'm 50 years old. I'm working for Gobright now for 6 years. And traveling everywhere to spread the gospel about what we do and how we can help organizations to be more effective in their office life, just to say so. And make it a great experience for all the people who come to the office in the end.
Right.
Yep.
Awesome. That's perfect. So let's just get straight into the meat and potatoes of this episode. Just to give you an idea, the structure of this episode will be on the first half. We will talk about the biggest challenges that you might have faced with collaboration between teams. I would say pre and post COVID, obviously, with hybrid working and everything. I bet there's been a lot of changes there. I'm curious to know if that's true, and if so, what the changes are. And in the second half of this podcast, we will talk about how to deal with these challenges and how to sort of, face them head on and make sure that the collaboration gets more effective. So let's immediately start with that one. I have a statement for you both, and the statement is: collaboration challenges shouldn't exist in a properly functioning team, ever. Jens?
They shouldn't. That's wishful thinking, I guess. There are always challenges, and the biggest challenge, I guess, you always have is based on culture. Culture is a wide topic that you can address, but culture is something that is built up not only by nationality or by region, but more than that alone. The culture is also your experiences in your previous life, your previous professional careers. And you bring a team together, and all of them have got a backload. All of them got something they carry with them, a certain point of view they've got. And you have to make sure that you bring it together in one point of view, almost one direction that you can go through as a team. But that's building. That's actually work. That's not something that just happens and you can just bring to the table. It's something you work through.
Right. It takes time.
It takes time.
Yeah.
Time and effort. And the most important thing is the acknowledgement that you actually acknowledge the differences, and you know that you've got those differences and those different employees, and there is a possibility that they've got other point of views. Right.
Well, that's a very concise, very good answer. I would say very concise answer. Chris, for you, you're an employee at Gobright, but there's also people that you manage. I'm sure you've experienced collaboration issues, maybe in your team or maybe even yourself. This statement, they shouldn't exist in a properly functioning team. How would you respond to that?
I think first of all that we don't want it, but
Right.
and it should not be, but it happens. And culture could be one major topic, and the other one I think is communication, which is always also a topic. For example, if we start dinner at home, I can talk to everybody. Hey, we start dinner, but nobody's listening. If I send a WhatsApp to everybody downstairs at the table, everybody's there in a minute. So, what changed?
Yeah.
You know, what's different with, let's say, 20 years ago?
Exactly.
Well, I think the answer is quite there. So that means that also collaboration and office life is changing, and you need different tools for that instead of 10 years back maybe.
Right.
And that makes it interesting for us both to check into that, and probably also for our listeners. Okay, that's interesting, because how do we do that?
Yeah, exactly.
That's why we're here in the end.
Yeah, very good point. Jens, we just mentioned, you've been in HR for quite a long time.
Mm-hmm.
We know that over the last, I would say, 3 or 4 years, hybrid working has had a huge increase. Of course, it existed before COVID, but I think COVID definitely doubled down on that. What are the biggest challenges you have faced in terms of collaboration in context of hybrid working, you would say?
Well, first I have to mention, I was just thinking about those 20 years. You asked me how long I was in business.
Mm-hmm.
My first job, we actually only had a fixed telephone line, a fax. For some viewers might not even know what a fax is anymore. And we did everything by, if we had mail, we had actually mail, post,
Wow.
from a letter, let's say. So a lot changed, but especially now with COVID, the hybrid working, which was actually not existing in our company before COVID. It took on during COVID, after COVID, but there are some challenges, and I can actually bundle them together in 2 parts. And the first part is connecting. The connection is easier going through distance. So let's say before, if I had a meeting in Rotterdam, now I can say I stay in my office in Antwerp and I've got a meeting via the Teams or Zooms or whatever there is. That makes it very interesting, because you can easier connect with your colleagues and with your teams. On the other hand, you have to take care of the balance. It's important to also have a kind of a feeling with the person, and the body language of the person, and the physical contact with the person. And for some meetings, you have to know when you have to be present or not. Some important meetings just are better to do face to face with each other.
Right.
So balance is actually the biggest keyword. The second challenge, and also here is balance important, is it's letting go of your team. And what I mean with this is trusting them, making sure that you can trust them when you're not seeing them. And for some managers, that's a big issue. And surely there are some people taking advantage of the fact that their manager is not present.
Sure.
And you have to make sure that you manage that as a manager, that you make sure that those actions are managed and are corrected. But you have, in basic, you have to trust your employees and make sure that they can work in a trustful environment.
Right. I always have the idea as well that if you have a team that whenever they're not physically in the same space as their manager, they immediately stop working or start doing other things. I think you have a different problem than hybrid working, right? Because then there is apparently a culture of being unproductive unless, the tyrant of a manager is walking through your office. Yeah. That should probably not be, I would think, the culture in your company.
Well, there's a very interesting theory of McGregor, the X and Y theory of McGregor, and it describes 2 different kind of managers. And the one manager is bothered with the idea that people are lazy, people only work for money, and people will not work if you're not there.
Exactly.
If you're that kind of a manager, I can guarantee you will fail. But if you're the other side of management, if you're the manager that trusts his employee, thinks that employees really want to do their job, are keen to do their job, and have an eagerness to perform, then I guess you will have a very strong team, and you can build a very strong team. If you're the first kind of manager, you will fail. You will never have a team. You will have a set of individuals with no passion for your company, and you will get a self-fulfilling prophecy. So get the manager with the open view, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah, and I would say regardless of hybrid working then, if you're the first type of manager.
Yeah, regardless. But hybrid working makes it, of course, more difficult. If you're the first kind of manager, you don't really see your employees. So you have a feeling that you have a lack of control.
Mm-hmm.
And that will bring you in a very uncomfortable situation and will make you as a manager very stressful and makes your view on those people even accelerates.
Right. Yes.
So in hybrid working, it's even more important that you are the second kind of manager with trust.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you agree, Chris?
Yeah. I must say myself that if I step back a little, then I can see the team flourish. Actually, yeah, you give them the room and the chance to be even better than they thought they would ever be themselves, and that's difficult. But I definitely agree with you, and it motivates yourself too. Yeah, you can be proud of your team. Look at what they've done without me being there or always giving my opinion, for example. On the other hand, if we know that this works, and you have to collaborate with one another, then you want to spend as less time as possible by arranging everything, because it now comes down to what you as an employee are doing.
Right.
And what I mean by that is, if you used to go to the office every day, it's just a routine. So you wake up in the morning, you take a cup of coffee, breakfast, you step in the car, you go or in the public transportation, you go to the office, and then it starts,
Yeah.
And then every day again. But now it's up to you. What do you do? So, what does that mean if I go to the office tomorrow? Will my colleagues be there? Am I able to collaborate? What do I need for that? Is it available? And it's our passion as Gobright to make sure that employees who want to collaborate in this professional area, like you mentioned, that they have the tools to do that as easy as possible and spend as less time on that.
Right.
Because that makes also you as an employer very likable to employees, because they know, hey, it's well done there because it's easy,
Yeah.
So you need several things to get that in place. So first of all, the management, and maybe first of all the employees who are self-driven, like you say, then the management, and then the tools.
Yeah,
right.
I think that's a good triangle.
Yeah, the tools are definitely very important. If you don't have the right tools, you also will see frustration, and you also will see that you're not an attractive employer anymore.
Exactly.
So you really have to have the right tools in place to facilitate the entire body of hybrid working.
Yeah.
And actually 10, 20 years ago, that was also quite normal, because if you had a job 8 hours a day sitting behind a desk, you need a special certified chair, for example. Otherwise, you could get backaches and stuff.
Right.
So these tools have been there always, but they are changing now. Because these days, look at yourself. You're sitting in a chair which doesn't look like an office chair. Right?
Exactly.
It's like the one you have at home.
Yeah.
This whole environment looks like we're at home instead of in the office. So all these things are changing.
Yeah.
Oh.
Very much. Maybe you've already answered this a little bit, but maybe we can elaborate a bit more on it if I ask this question. Because my next question was, in what ways does hybrid working affect collaboration? You two already mentioned that maybe having to spend too much time on arranging your office visit if you don't have the right tools might affect it. Are there more ways that hybrid working has affected collaboration?
Well, let me first start with kind of a pitfall with hybrid working. If you don't respect the balance, and you also have got to respect your working hours when you're at home. When you're in an office, you drive home, you drive from home to the office, you've got a clear boundary between what is home and what is office, what is life, personal life, what is work life. If you work at home too much and too frequently, and there's no balance, you risk that your personal life and your work life is going to get mixed up. And in the past, often there was a certain expression that's called let me think about it. I just had it in my mind, but I forgot it. It's the colonization of the day, of the night by the day, which means if you're starting to go towards workaholics, you will have less of a night and more of a day and more of a work day. You get something similar now if you don't respect the balance. That's the colonization of your personal life by your work life, and you have to bear in mind that that's a very big pitfall. If you're not careful with this can damage you and can damage your environment.
Right.
So I forgot the question. Sorry, I was
No.
full of myself.
No, that was a very good answer. The question was how, in what ways does hybrid working affect collaboration? Yes. Yeah.
It's that's a pitfall. The good thing is that collaboration is more and more possible with the also the tools that are more and more available. So you can collaborate over larger distances and more easily planned, let's say.
Yep.
But again, what I mentioned before, you have to respect the balance and make sure that for some meetings you have to be really present. You have to do face-to-face. You have to sit together with a team.
Yep.
I find it, for instance, very difficult to do brainstorm sessions through a Teams meeting, for instance. That's something I prefer to do with the people present face-to-face. On the other hand, for a lot of meetings, it's very handy to do just a short team, 15 minutes, and you can ask your questions, you get your answers, you can move on with your job. So it's you have to know when you are doing the home office and when you are doing the office.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Are there negative impacts, you would say? Like what is and if there isn't any, I don't want to like steer your answers here, but I would say, are there, because you mentioned the pitfall, if you don't have that balance, then, your personal life, work life can, and I guess that obviously affects the way you collaborate in the end, because, you might get burnt out from your work, obviously. Yeah. What is another way? Is there more than that when it comes to negative impacts?
Yeah, well, you can't underestimate the informal contact of colleagues. It's well written in the literature that a lot of great decisions in the workplace are made by the coffee machine, and that's true, because when you're in an informal context with your colleagues, you will also discuss work, but you will discuss it with sometimes a more open view, and those informal contacts definitely got less with the hybrid working. The lunch together with colleagues in the afternoon.
That was exactly the one I was thinking of, because you're from Belgium, right?
Yes.
So we know the Belgium lunch culture is very extensive compared to the Netherlands ones. Yeah. So to the Dutch one. So I was just wondering how is that changing then? Because a lot was been done during lunch, but if you had 4 or 5 a week and now it's only one, so how about that?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. Also here again, you have to have the balance, make sure that it still can take place, and even stimulate it more, I guess. I'm a big fan of taking initiatives to stimulate what is missing. I agree that you are not seeing each other every day anymore, so you're missing out on some colleagues. It might be possible that I go to the office every Monday and Tuesday, and you go every Wednesday and Friday, and we will not meet each other for weeks and weeks and weeks. So then you have to take, as a manager, I guess, corrective actions and make sure that these meetings take place and that this informal context is still, it's still taking place. You're actually going to force it more. Whereas before it was more spontaneously, now you're going to bring it more in a schedule, let's say. And you plan a lunch, for instance, with everyone together, or once a month a group meeting with an informal part, that you make sure that happens. And as you say, lunch and eating is very important for especially in Belgium, as you can see looking at me. But it's often the way that we make arrangements and we make decisions. Yeah.
Very good point. So what I hear from you both again is it really comes down to that you just mentioned, Chris, that the routine of going to the office is is not there, because now with hybrid working you get to choose. So it's a conscious decision to go to the office,
Exactly.
and a conscious decision to have lunch together, a conscious decision to do a brainstorm session face to face, because it's easy to do. I highly resonate with that. I personally also find brainstorms nearly impossible through Teams, because it's just, you keep interrupting each other and be like, oh, sorry, you go, and then you both wait, and then you go again, and there's just too much going on, I would say.
It's the same with a lunch. Yeah, a lunch you don't do via Teams.
Yeah, that would be kind of strange to all. Yeah, I guess eat your sandwich in front of your laptop screen.
Because, during COVID, I was sneaked into a cooking course. Well, people who know me are quite laughing now, because I never cook.
Okay.
I hate it. But hey, you got nothing else to do. So it was an online cooking course, making a curry or something.
Online cooking course,
yeah.
Wow.
And I remember all my daughters and my wife sitting in the kitchen looking what he's doing, because he's never cooking. And I was looking at his iPad, and somebody was telling, you got to do this now, got to do that now. And you saw in the bottom all these people ripping open the packs.
It was live as well.
It was live. It was live cooking. So I did it and I managed. But the thing is, as soon as you start eating, nobody of the session is there. So you cannot share. No. Hey, how was yours once? How was your ones? Well, let me taste, That's the thing that you have when you're together. And that's where creation comes in. That's where a brainstorming comes in, but also enjoying,
Yeah.
And that's highly impossible via what kind of video system, because you can't even look each other in the eye, right?
No.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Very good point.
If from the HR point of view, what is also important for us, what we have learned the hard way, is interviews with applicants, with new hires.
Yeah.
And I've actually been very surprised, sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a bad way, when I then for the first time met this person in person. And I remember two examples I want to give. The first one is from how relaxed you can be when you've got a job interview. That was when I saw the applicant reaching behind the screen, taking a glass of wine and drinking from his wine. I thought you were in an interview, for God's sakes. So that was a strange experience. We didn't withhold this candidate, by the way. And the second one was I had 3 or 4 Teams meetings with a candidate. We was convinced this was the guy we needed to have. And the first time he was walking into our office with he was wearing a costume. His costume was too big for him. He has a very strange style. I thought, my God, what did I do? And I've already offered them a contract. It was already signed. Luckily enough, after 2 weeks, he resigned, because clearly he was also not feeling good in the environment. But it was really the wrong candidate. And and not only me, but all the other people that had interviewed them had not seen that.
Yeah.
We only noticed it when he was standing before us live. Yeah. So that's also an example that sometimes we really have to be there. Sometimes you have to do something live.
Of course. Yes. A very interesting take on that. I'm sorry, I'm still sort of thinking about the person that took a glass of wine.
He was very relaxed. That's what I can say. Yeah.
Very laid down, very brave as well, to just be like, I'm going to...
Actually, in a strange way, I had respect for him.
Exactly. I kind of respect it.
It's also something about being yourself, which is actually quite nice. So.
Exactly. Yeah. If you enjoy wine, it does, might raise some questions about drinking wine during work time, maybe, but...
Well, they do during lunch.
Maybe that's Belgian lunch culture. I don't know.
We've got a very strict policy in our
country. Okay. I meant in Belgium. Yeah. So sorry.
Very nice. So I have another question. This is a very broad question, but I'm very curious to see how you both will answer it. How would you, Jens, describe good collaboration? What makes collaboration good? It's kind of an abstract.
That's a tricky question, actually. What makes collaboration good? It's I think the process and the results, the way you work together, the experience you've got as members of a team and as a team as in total, does it feel good? Do you have a good feeling about how every one is connecting with each other? And then the end result, do you reach the end result you want to reach? Are you satisfied with it? But I think you have to look at the entire package, because you can reach a good result with bad collaboration, and you can have good collaboration without a result.
Right.
So I think it's a double. You have to have both.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. How do I facilitate that? Because you mentioned that feeling of having good collaboration and also getting that good result, having that good you talked about culture before, and I think you mean that in like an office culture way, right? Where it's like you have people from all over the world, even maybe working together. How do we sort of get that? How do I facilitate a good environment, a good collaborative experience?
As a manager, know your people, know who you're handling with, culture is, as soon as we open our eyes when we're born, we get culturized. We got the influence from our parents, from our community, from our school, from our friends, and go on. And that brings you as a person. That gives you a personality. And you have to acknowledge that in a team you've got different persons with different personalities, with a different background, different culture. And know your people is know how you can put everyone in the right place so that the machinery is properly functioning. And that there's a big need of empathy and understanding how a person feels and thinks. And that's how you can manage a good team. Right. It's like soccer. If you put your goalkeeper in an attacking position, you won't be happy. You won't score. Yep. You have a problem in your goal, and you as a team will not succeed. Make sure that everyone's on the same place, on the good place, on the right place, and also on the place that he or she wants to be. And then they will bring your team up to a higher level, I guess.
Nice. I can only agree with that, I think. Chris, this might be a question for you as well. Jens, you just mentioned creating that environment, knowing where people need to be, but you also mentioned that you can have a good result with bad collaboration and vice versa. So people might wonder, how do I measure good collaboration? Because like you just mentioned, it's not just the result on which you can measure it. Chris, can you tell us maybe a bit more about that? Do you have some ideas on how to measure good collaboration? How do you do it, maybe?
Well, I'm very interested in your answer, by the way. But we try to make it measurable. Mm-hmm. But a lot of what collaboration is about feeling and recognition, for example. Yep. How do you measure that? Exactly. That's difficult. So how we can measure it is by doing surveys, for example, and look for employee happiness. That will be something you recognize, I guess. Yep. And we can build tools for that. We have tools for that. And we see that especially larger organizations where it's more difficult to know one another are very in need of those things, because they want to know how does our colleagues feel? How do they feel? Are they still happy with us? Because if they're not, then the empathy comes in, and we want to talk, we want to know, we want to share, because we value you and we want you to stay. So from the back end we can help with that, but I think you should shine your light on it. What your thoughts are there?
Yeah, well, it's important to have these insights, and we want to prevent being a manager or a director that thinks he knows what's going on in the mind of people, because then you get certain ideas, expectations, and you're going to handle on that assumptions, right? You're going to handle on those assumptions without having a concrete check if these are true. So the good tools for that are also very important. Yes. Right.
So don't assume. Use different tools to measure. Give people the space to tell if they're maybe not happy or if they're really happy and why.
Yes.
But what I take from both your answers is that a lot of it is not just measuring, but also having an open mind. Just to put it very briefly there, but that you just mentioned in the beginning as well. Yeah. Trust and openness.
Openness, open mind, and believing what you see after you use the tools. If you receive your tools and the result is that in certain areas your employees are not happy, you have to acknowledge that, and you have to work on that.
Right.
It's some managers, not within Bilfinger luckily, but some managers have the reflex of going into discussion about the results.
Right.
No, the results are the results. If you have a certain team and the result of the team is that the team is very unhappy, then it's the result. You don't have to argue, oh, they say this and they think this. No, that's the result. And then you have to work on that and make sure that you've got an answer and a solution.
Right.
And often the pitfall of a lot of managers is trying to minimize or argue that the results are not correct. And that's not a good way. Results are results.
Good point. Very good point. Yeah. Do you agree?
Well, it's exactly inspiring. That's what you get when you get an HR manager, and I'm also learning here. So
nice.
That's nice.
That's good.
Yeah,
that's good. Okay, so let's move on to the second part of the podcast. You, of course, already mentioned a couple of challenges with hybrid working, but with collaboration in general. Of course, it's a tricky thing that can bring very good stuff, but obviously it can also go wrong. Let's go to the second statement here. Hybrid working has a negative impact on collaboration, like by default. That's just a rule. Do you agree or disagree?
I disagree.
Okay.
I disagree. It gives you more flexibility. It gives you more reachability. In the past, our Rotterdam office was in Brille. If you come from Antwerp, that's a hell of a lot longer than where we're now.
Yep.
Meetings were difficult because commuting was 2 hours drive. So you were not eager of doing that every day. But now with the hybrid work and the possibilities, technological possibilities and the tools that are available, I can have a meeting from my office in Antwerp with even the people in Groningen. Or even today, I had a meeting every week. I've got a meeting with my colleagues in Oberhaus in Germany. Perfect. And it's a pure functional meeting. And once every month we come together and we meet face to face. So it's not by default that collaboration is going down. On the contrary, I think this has opened a lot of opportunities and better collaboration.
Right. Yep. That was also one of my questions is what are there challenges that were taken away by hybrid working? But I think you've already covered a couple of them.
Yeah, the business trips have actually dropped seriously. And I've got a personal problem that I sleep very, very badly in hotels. So right. I'm quite keen of keeping it like this.
Yeah.
No, that's the actual physical barriers are for a big part gone.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially in an international company like Bilfinger, I can imagine that definitely helps out.
Yeah, it helped, and strangely enough, we were forced in this by this virus, because I do remember the first months of the COVID epidemic. We had still landlines with kind of name that with where you could call in with a group of people.
Conference calls.
The conference calls. Yeah.
So we started actually with that.
Wow.
And if you had asked someone in our company if they knew what Microsoft Teams was or what Zoom was or what, I can guarantee you 9 out of 10 people wouldn't have been able to answer you. So, yeah.
Yeah, it depends on the industry.
Yeah, surely.
I know what you guys do, so I can imagine that. Yeah. I was talking to people everywhere around the world already via Skype at that time because it's not possible to fly everywhere for the first meeting, right? So, and then all of a sudden Skype disappeared. It became Skype for Business, and then all of a sudden it was Teams because it was bought by Microsoft, of course.
Yeah.
But it's so easy for a lot of things. You mentioned job interviews, for example. Yesterday there was a girl who had a job interview in my company, and she demanded the first one was online.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I was expecting she would come to the office. No, she said I will do online only.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's becoming just a way of life within your working life.
Yep.
And another thing which is important too is what we've always also seen during the lockdowns is that not everybody has the environment to have some kind of a concentrated workplace at home. And that's something that we have to think about, I guess, because what do you do if people live in a very small apartment or whatsoever and don't have the ability to work from there?
Right. Yeah.
So, and that's also something that comes up, is that you see these rental offices. You can go out in the big cities everywhere. There are these companies that you can just rent an office for a day or for half a day, and so the whole landscape of working when you're in a sector when you need an office, is totally changing. Yeah, and it will keep changing for the coming 5-6 years until some of the structures will be more definite. But it's very changeable.
I also experience this with, I've often meetings with other organizations, training organizations, for instance, and the commuting time is not always that clear. Sometimes you drive an hour, sometimes 2 hours. So often I make arrangements that I can work there, because they're also in a culture of flexibility, and they've got flexible desks. So that gives me a kind of a rest, gives me less stress, because I can drive earlier if I'm in traffic. If I'm in traffic jam, no problem. I've got enough time that I've taken for that. If not, I can work there. I can do some work without being stressed that I'm losing an hour, for instance.
Yep.
So see these changes that you talk about also in the offices and in different companies that there are. I see these changes as a benefit, actually, and also benefit for the future, giving less stress to people.
Right. Speaking of the office space, obviously integral part, I would say, in collaboration, especially pre-COVID, because it was, well, in my experience, the only place where I would see my coworkers when we were working, of course. That has changed. People are in different locations. We already touched on how, those boundaries have gone away, which is a positive thing. But what role does an office space play in collaboration, in your opinion? How would you describe that?
Well, an office space has to be welcoming. An office space has to be a place where you like, which is enjoyable. That's difficult to define, but you don't. If it's an office where it's not, let's say, hygienic, for instance, or there's too much mess, or it's too busy, or there's too much noise, or you name it. If it's not pleasurable to work there, you will not keep your employees happy. Right. So it has to be, likable. Yeah.
Pleasant,
yes.
To be a pleasant place. And that obviously has a positive impact on collaboration, if it is.
Like every impulse that someone gets has a certain effect on them. That's also why certain shops are dressed in as they are, or have colors as they are. That's because you influence your behavior, a part of that. Yep. If you're in an office with only gray floor and gray walls and a metal desk and then a metal chair, that's not pleasant. You will not. This will have an effect on your behavior and on your thinking. So it's important. Yes.
Right.
That's why the office environment is changing, for example, because if you meet up with 4 colleagues, you used to go to a meeting room. Yeah. Nowadays you have 2 couches. We sit with 4 people on 2 couches, laptop on a lap.
Yep.
And that's it. So it's not necessarily more healthy for your body, by the way, but that's a different discussion. So what you see, the main 2 topics which I see changing in office life, and I've been all my working career in all kinds of offices everywhere around the world, is that there are less desks and there are more meeting areas. Because if you go to the office, you want to meet somebody. Because working behind a desk, you can do everywhere, right? You don't necessarily have to go to the office for that. And the other one is, like you said, it should be likable to be there. It should feel like home. Your office is your home, or your home is your office, whatever. You want to have good coffee. If possible, you want to have lunch. Right. So you don't have to go out to get unhealthy food.
Yep.
And these are very, very important subjects to keep your personnel in, to keep them healthy, and to also attract new personnel. But you will probably experience that too. So
Yeah, indeed. If let's say some environments that are too noisy or too crowded, you will get complaints from your employees.
What?
They will also sometimes even get physical complaints. I knew a certain point. We just moved from our office from one side of the river of Antwerp towards the other side, and for my team at that point, they've had a miscalculation of the office space per person. So they actually forgot the filing cabinets. But if you've got 1,000 employees, you've got 1,000 files. These are a couple of that takes place. That's it.
Yeah.
And we were too crowded, and I actually saw people dropping off because of the unpleasant environment they were working in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's also health. That's employee health, and you have to bear that in mind and take care of that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So from what I understand from both of you, the office space has become a meeting space. It's become a place where you do the face-to-face collaboration, but you need people to also like feel welcome there, feel at home there, and have that open atmosphere you talked about in the beginning.
Yeah. Yes, I've only had three employers, let's say, during my career, but for me that was also as employee a critical factor. How does this company feels to me?
Yep.
And is this a company I want to work in? Do I see myself sitting here in this office or in this building or in this environment? That's very important.
Yep, that makes sense. And you can spend a lot of time at the office, right? Even with hybrid work, and if you're 2-3 days in a week, that's still a lot of your personal time that you're there. Indeed. So yeah, it needs to be a good place. To the final part of this podcast, in the beginning, you talked about primarily, I would say, balance. So balancing personal life and work life if you work from home, but also balancing knowing like when hybrid working is a good idea and when you need to have face-to-face meetings, and how to make sure that doesn't involve or affect the collaboration too much, or that it only affects it in a positive way. How do I get that balance? And I know that might be a tricky thing to answer, but maybe you have some tips, tricks, how to make sure that I keep that balance as a manager.
Well, it takes a lot of managerial focus, and also that is changed during the years. If you were a manager 30 years ago, or you're a manager now, your core task is pretty much the same, but everything around it, and that's the biggest part, has changed a lot. In the past, in the 60s and 70s, it was the boss telling you something and you did it. And why? Because the boss told it. Now you have another collaboration with people for the good, by the way. And I think that also being able to see through being able to see the balance possibilities and needs is a skill that you have to develop as a manager. It's difficult to say black or white in this, because it's depending on what kind of business you are doing, what kind of team you're managing, what kind of people are in that team. So it's difficult to say this is the solution and it's a solution that's possible for everyone.
Sure.
It's actually more customized. You can, if I take two examples, if I take a team from, let's say my HR business partners, for them the balance is it's much more of being present in the office, and not only in the office but also in the locations where our employees are, because their key task is having connection with employees, and also making sure that those employees can grow, can develop themselves, that they can hire the right people. Like I mentioned before with the interview of a candidate, they also have to make sure that they see a new candidate face to face at a certain point. So their task is their balance is different. And let's say my payroll team, they have to pull in data, process data, and they can do it in the office, but can do it from home. They can spend much more time in their home office, for instance, in relation to their jobs, their tasks, than those HR business partners. So the balance is different. like you also mentioned, if you're at home and you don't have a good office place, it's not interesting of working 50 or 60% at home. Then it's better for you to come to the office and have the room and the possibilities. So that's all. That's almost more customized, and you have to look at it from a different angle depending on where you're looking at.
And these people may oftentimes are also the ambassadors. Because if you look in the United States, for example, 90% of the people in average is not returning to the office.
Wow.
So that's a big discussion right away for a lot of CEOs because they know what the benefit is of having people in. Mm-hmm. So those people who are coming more often to the office are the ambassadors to get other people in.
Right. Yeah.
So we're also quite thinking, hey, how can you drive people to come more in the office? Because that's a benefit to the company in the end, and also for collaboration in teams.
Exactly.
So instead of only for us, for example, for what we do, instead of making booking tools so that you will be able to book everything you need, we're also developing now the first products in collaboration. So that you can see who is there and when somebody is there, because you want to meet those people. And what does that say to the facility manager? Because he has the same insight. So that means that if he can see on Monday that on Friday there will be, let's say, 20% of the people, that he can close down the third and the second floor and say, well, those are closed today. So we don't have to spend as much energy, heating, cleaning, etc., etc.
Yep.
So office life will not be only be more pleasant, but also more efficient.
Right. Yeah.
And environmental friendly in the end.
Yep.
Exactly.
And that's and it ticks all the boxes. So it's a good thing.
Yeah, indeed.
Positive. Nice. So conclusion is, I would say, getting tools, measuring is very important, but also on top of that is, as a manager, your attitude towards results, towards your people. And like you mentioned, not just every business is different, but every individual that is in your team might be different, different home situation, different. So you have to be very, very open and empathetic in order to make this work, I would say.
Yeah. That's a good conclusion.
It's people's business. Yeah.
Nice. As always, we want to end the episode on 3 concrete tips that we want to give. So Jens, I want to start with you.
Well, make the right arrangements and right solutions for the right people, I guess.
I like that. Chris?
We talked about the balance. I think that every organization is different. It's hard to find the similarities. So that means that if you want to do the best for your employees, and you also want to make sure that you can measure things so that you can also make your office effective, make sure you find the right partner who can help you with that. Like an expert who says, okay, let's sit down and write it out and make sure that you benefit from both sides.
Exactly. Nice. And I would like to say, from talking with these 2 gentlemen today, that I've definitely learned that having an open attitude and a very empathetic attitude is crucial in managing.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Gobright Vodcast. This week we were joined by Jens, who taught us all about effective collaboration. We can't wait to welcome you next week for our new episode.